NFL insider Ian Rapoport gave a massive update on the potential of a Baltimore Ravens and Davante Adams pairing. We talk about what he had to say, what it all means, and so much more coming up next year on the Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Purple Friday, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. As always, we're free and available for you. All podcasting platforms, so in video form on YouTube, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on. Also in audio form, you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're here for you 5 days a week, of course, of daily Ravens coverage plus more. We go live after every single Ravens game. We do bonus episodes. You want Ravens content, we have it right here for you all the time on Locked On Ravens. With us today on Purple Friday is our Purple Friday guest, Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast. Sam, I need to give your flowers off the bat, man. Look, that Buffalo game, there were a lot of people who were saying, I don't really know. Is this going to be a game Baltimore can pull out? Buffalo's red hot coming into that game, averaging almost 38 points per game over their first three matchups. Well, let me tell you, you were the first person I saw to really dive deep on that matchup and say, this is Baltimore's game. And let me tell you, Sam, that was Baltimore's game on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup worked perfectly for the Ravens. I mean, after that Cowboys game, I started to see some things matriculate with the play of the offensive line kind of improving and seeing what they could possibly do against the Bills team that really plays a basic style of defense. And the first play of the game, you could tell right away that the coaching staff was salivating in the mouth to get it going, and it kind of knocked down the teeth of the Bills, if you will. First play of the offensive play, and, the rest is history.
And we know that we talked about it. That's a stubborn Bills defense, one that doesn't really like to get out of what they play. And the Ravens essentially forced them to do so. Jonah Schaefer, the Baltimore Banner, I believe, said it was 4 or 5 plays in. The Bills were like, okay, we can't hang doing with what we're doing right now. And they still couldn't hang after changing because they just don't have the personnel to match up with Baltimore's heavy sets, stuff that you had previewed, Sam, and we had talked about here on this show. So shout out to Sam. That's why we have him on here. He knows his stuff on the Baltimore Ravens and how it goes. Just a little bit, just a little bit there. So appreciate you for bringing that insight last week, Sam. But we're here for this week's insight. We're going to get to the Ravens and Bengals in the final part of the show. Seems like the Davante Adams stuff has really only been matriculating for these last few days. Seriously, feels like we've been talking about it every single day. I think this is my third straight Davante Adams show. It feels a lot like what happened last offseason with DeAndre Hopkins. I did like 6 straight DeAndre Hopkins shows when he was with Arizona. But we got an update from Ian Rapoport of NFL Network, obviously one of the best in the business of bringing that NFL news. And the report is that, obviously, no surprise to anyone, Davante Adams hopes to be traded to the Jets, but is open to other destinations. So Ian ended up saying that a couple of other teams, including the Ravens, are among teams that either have inquired about the 6-time Pro Bowler or are places Adams would be happy landing. So the other teams outside of the Ravens, it's the Saints, the Steelers, the Bills, the Cowboys, and Ian says perhaps the San Francisco 49ers. So this is a substantive report here. Now, it's not clarified whether the Ravens are a team that has inquired or just a place he would be happy going. We know, Sam, the respect that Davante has for Lamar Jackson. We've talked about that. He's obviously praised Lamar in so many different lights over the course of his career, including before the Ravens Week 2 matchup with Las Vegas. But usually some of these reports are like, oh, okay, like that stuff we already know, or like, does that really mean anything? This actually is like, oh, hey, either there's interest on Adams' side or there's interest on Baltimore's side. And based off the report, who knows? Maybe there could even be interest by both parties.
Yeah, do not be surprised. Eric DeCosta is not Ozzie Newsome. I tell people that all the time. He's not afraid to pull the trigger. The cap space is a subject of debate. I mean, any way you slice it, the Ravens are definitely, I think they're under $5 million in cap right now. Yeah. It's going to be very difficult for them to bring in a salary like that. The Raiders will have to help the Ravens out. And if the Raiders do help the Ravens out, that means more compensation will be required in order to get a trade to go through. So I think the Ravens should definitely attempt, at least have a conversation. And think Ian Rapoport made a statement that perhaps there was conversation with the Ravens and Raiders. So I think that should definitely be the case because, the Ravens are definitely in win now mode. They got Derrick Henry. You saw the potential of this offense. Adding a piece like Davante Adams just increases what the Ravens are able to do on the field. I think they'll have to get rid of a player, and the first player that comes to mind, unfortunately, is Rashod Bateman, somebody that can actually be plugged into the Raiders and maybe even start immediately for them. So there is some interest in my mind. I don't know if it actually comes to fruition because, again, the Jets seem to be all in as well, and that relationship with Aaron Rodgers seems like something that may happen. Also, the Saints are another team that I think could possibly be a destination. I think they're my number one spot, I believe, for Davante Adams, just because of the relationship between him and Carr. So, but do not count the Ravens. This is not a situation where, every offseason you hear, the Ravens may trade for this guy. There's interest for sure. I'm telling you. I'm not sure about Davante Adams' feelings, but I can tell you the Ravens will definitely be doing their due diligence.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people forever, really, since Lamar started as a quarterback, have said, well, go get him that stud veteran number one guy, right? We've seen what Jalen Hurts got with A.J. Brown. We saw what Josh Allen got with Stephon Diggs. Arizona gave Kyler both DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown, investing some draft capital and money into those guys. You're right. The money is a big issue where like the Ravens just not even this year, but Sam, I'll pull up the Adams contract situation here. He has 2 years left on his deal with a $35.6 million base salary in each of those 2 seasons. Now, people look at the cap hit. That cap hit is $44 million, but not all that money travels over when you trade for a player. You look at the base salary and then also some of those bonuses. So he has $600,000. I believe it's a $500,000 roster bonus and a $100,000 workout bonus. So you factor in those two. So about $36.2 million each year for Davante Adams, which is where, Sam, obviously you mentioned that on the Raiders' part and Davante Adams, you might have to have some help with both those parties getting Adams to Baltimore. But there are no doubts about it, Sam. You add Davante Adams into this offense with how the Ravens already operate. I know there will be some questions about, well, how often would he get the ball? But a clip has resurfaced from January about Davante talking about, well, would you rather take 1,700 yards or would you rather go 800 to 900 with Lamar Jackson and win a Super Bowl? And Davante was like, man, I've had a lot of those big seasons already. I might have to take that 800 to 900. This is not your typical, give me all the targets type deal. Obviously, you're not going to throw him one ball a game. That's a different conversation. But you plug him in this offense with Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in that passing offense. You have Derrick Henry. I know people throw the word unstoppable around pretty loosely these days, Sam, but I mean, how would you stop that? Like, to me, that is the definition of unstoppable.
Literally, as you were talking, I was thinking of all the ways the Ravens could use Davante Adams. It's just a very great situation for the Ravens to be in potentially. You talk about Mark Andrews and what he does for their offense and how you have defensive coordinators really try and double team him, triple team him. It's way easier to do that for a tight end because you really got a lot of bodies in the middle of the field. Having to double and triple team a guy on the outside just sets up the rest of your offense beautifully, leaving it open, the middle of the field open for Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, to get those guys involved. It's just, it'll be crazy. I think it will be definitely a win now position. Obviously, there are some drawbacks to getting a guy like that with that salary. You lose the opportunity to sign guys like Tyler Linderbaum, sign guys like Odafe Owe. There's a chance you could lose a player in draft picks, obviously, with a guy like that. But if you want to win this year, go all in, I say, and just get the guy. But I understand the reservation with fans and pundits with that type of deal and the cap space the Ravens are in. So I see about 5% chance the Ravens get it done, but there is a chance for sure.
Yeah, see, I'm with you where I think there's a difference for both of us between us wanting it to happen and then us understanding that it's not really realistic for them to go out and do this, because you're right. The draft capital and just anybody else, whether it is Rashod Bateman or whatever is additional compensation, that's one aspect of it. The money is another aspect. And I'm glad you brought up those future deals, because that's something I've talked about this week too, of it's not just about can that player fit into your cap situation and can you make the right amount of space for him? but it's about, well, if there's some level of an extension that happens and that spans a couple more years, it may be less annual value, but it's bleeding into the extension windows for Linderbaum or for Hamilton or for Flowers. You mentioned Owe, who was on the 5th-year option next year, but obviously if he plays the way he keeps playing, it's going to be in line for a hefty payday. Davante is going to be 32 the day before Christmas. That's not saying he's not talented still. He still is a heck of a receiver and a star stud number 1 guy. But there are all those other factors. So for all of those reasons, like Shark Tank, I'm out on them actually making the deal, but I'm in on wanting it to happen. I think it's a two-way street of I want it to happen, then it's coming right back at me of, yeah, right. It's probably not going to happen. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll wrap up our Davante Adams conversation talking about if they don't acquire him, how we feel about the Ravens receivers through 1 month of the season, because John Harbaugh made it very clear that he loves his guys. So we should have stayed tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds to turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. So for this Ravens and Bengals game, if you want to pick more on Derrick Henry's rushing yards, maybe more on the Jamar Chase receiving yards, you can do that over on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still talking with you here on this Purple Friday edition of the show. Again, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube in video form. Follow along in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Now, John Harbaugh was asked about the Davante Adams situation during his media availability on Wednesday. Didn't give too much substance on it, but I think sent some level of a message in his answer. Obviously, he's not going to go just commenting on other people's players like that, and he literally said as such, saying, really can't comment on anyone else's players. We love our guys. Not surprising at all that John Harbaugh took that route. Also said that he had enough of talking about Davante a couple weeks ago after what he did to the Ravens defense. It was a key catalyst in defeating Baltimore in week 2. But I'm going to pose the same question to you. What do you think about John Harbaugh's answer? And do you love their guys? Do you love where this group is right now as a receiving core? They'd obviously benefit from a guy like Davante, but as they are, do you feel like that's enough?
I mean, that answer was pretty much the textbook Harbaugh. I mean, you could expect it from him. I mean, I could have wrote it down myself after he asked the question. You just knew the answer was coming. Yeah. You like their guys. And, in some regards, you do like their guys. But the receiving core hasn't really been, the unit that we expected coming into the season. I mean, I think Zay Flowers has about, 150 yards after 4 games this year. Like so he's not doing as well statistically as you like. But, I mean, this offense is definitely a ground and pound team. I mean, you've seen it over the last couple of weeks. They're going to let their running game do their thing and less opportunities for the passing game. So I'm not going to give too much flack on that receiver group. Have Davante Adams or these guys? Give me Davante Adams. I mean, I don't know what you got to do to trade him. Obviously, I believe Zay Flowers is a no-go. I mean, you cannot get rid of that guy. Yep. I think he's proven himself to be a valuable target. But the other guys are, expendable in some ways when you think about the tier of talent that is Davante Adams. So, I mean, yeah, you like your guys and you can live with those guys as you're predominantly a run team. But the avenue that Davante Adams creates for your offense is very enticing. And I think Todd Monken would be foolish to say he wouldn't enjoy to have a guy like that on his roster.
I think anybody would love it. Anybody would love it. But in terms of actually, I should have made a graphic for this. I just thought about it right now as we're recording this. But in terms of non-realistic to realistic, if I'm giving 3 names for the Ravens, if people are on the train where obviously Sam, hey, they want to go out there and get another receiver, Davante would be great, but obviously I think he's the least realistic of these options. I'm still on the Courtland Sutton train. I don't know if Denver is going to be willing because, I mean, hey, they had a big one over the Jets last week and maybe that kickstarts their season or whatnot. But Courtland's on a good contract. He's a bigger bodied player. I feel like with his affordable deal, that could be something the Ravens look into, and I think would be a solid number 2 option next to Zay Flowers. But the one that I can't stop thinking about it, and it's again the guy that I mentioned earlier in the show. It's DeAndre Hopkins. That Tennessee team looks like it's going nowhere. DeAndre, I think, would be a little more affordable, both in terms of the contract and the draft capital and just package in general needed to go and get him. The Ravens have been interested in DeAndre Hopkins before. And, I've had multiple people on here. Spencer Schultz is the one who says this all the time. But when the Ravens want a guy, he more often than not sometimes finds a way into a Baltimore Ravens uniform, a la Des Bryant, a la Jadeveon Clowney. There are a bunch of other names on that list. How would you feel about a Courtland Sutton or a DeAndre Hopkins as opposed to Davante Adams?
I would love it, but you got to understand what you're essentially saying with those trades is that Rashod Bateman is no longer the guy. So I think if you bring in the Courtland Sutton, you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, you got to get rid of Rashod Bateman. I think it will be, poor for the locker room if he's there. I mean, you got Nelson Aguilar, and he has a specific role on that team, something that Rashod Bateman can't fill. And I don't think anyone else on the roster currently can fill. So his spot's pretty much safe. But to have Courtland Sutton, to have DeAndre Hopkins, I'd love it. I mean, it will just do wonders for this offense as well. Maybe not to the extent of Davante Adams, but, risk benefit, cost benefit. How could you go wrong with those guys? So to your point, DeAndre Hopkins has been a subject that I've heard around Ravens circles, if you will, over the last 12 months. So wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. I think the Titans are a team that might be rebuilding right now, and pairing him again with Derrick Henry seems like a opportunity to get the pass up. But we'll see how this offense folds. You may have a situation, maybe one coming up in week 5, where we need to lean more on the receivers, and we'll find out what this receiver core is all about. But for now, I think the Ravens will steadfast unless a turning point happens in that Davante Adams trade. I think they'll keep their eyes peeled as the trade deadline approaches. But I think for now, as John Harbaugh would say, they like their guys.
Yeah, it doesn't shock me. Doesn't shock me whatsoever that was the answer. So we'll see how it unfolds. But you mentioned, Sam, the Ravens maybe needing to lean more a bit on their passing game in week 5, and that'll be a big storyline we talk about in the final part of the show. But a big storyline from these past 2 weeks is the Ravens have only thrown the ball 32 total times in these past 2 weeks. 32 or 33. I don't remember if they did the math right or not. But anyway, low 30s is what we're saying with this team in terms of passing the ball. And a lot of that has been these past 3 weeks, they've been in positive game scripts. Week 1, they kind of had to come back against Kansas City to try to win that game. And we talked about the weird usage of Derrick Henry that week and just seeing what they were going to do. But these past 3, it's been, they got up big early on the Raiders. They got up big early on the Cowboys. They got up early big on the Bills. And while week 2 and week 3 certainly left something to be desired in terms of the end of the games, they haven't needed to throw the ball as much because they have just been dominating these early portions of the game. And with that does come games where Justice Hill is your leading receiver with 6 receptions, had a touchdown on a beautiful route, by the way. But it's a little bit different than what we've seen because in the past, Sam, and I've said this all week, Lamar's strategy was, all right, Mark's down there somewhere. I'm just going to throw the ball up in this general vicinity and he's going to come down with it. But it's music to my ears that he is spreading the ball around more. But as a, consequence, if you want to call it that, Mark has kind of not had the receiving impact this year that we've expected. The past 2 weeks total, he's had 2 total targets, 1 in each game, no receptions, but it's the unselfish play and the team mentality that takes teams so far with individual players having that. And Andrews has talked about it over these past couple of weeks. His time will come. He wants to win. He'll do anything he can. He might not be putting up those receiving numbers right now, Sam, but he is the ultimate example of people sacrificing on this team because he is absolutely just dominating in the blocking game, something that I'm not sure anybody anticipated this season.
No, and I thought Isaiah Likely said it best in the offseason that he's been working on his blocking in order to, contribute more to this team. But I had no idea that Mark Andrews was in the same blocking camp as him because he's been going crazy. In fact, in that 87-yard touchdown pass, I mentioned it on my show on YouTube that, Mark Andrews doesn't get that block, they don't score that touchdown. In fact, Mark Andrews did a great job baiting both the corner and the safety into creating a possible running lane for Derrick Henry. So he's been great as a blocker in open space, especially something that is very difficult for these tight ends to do so. And as far as him being, not having those receptions, not having those targets, teams are still doubling Mark Andrews in the middle of the field on passing downs. They're not going to have his safety blanket be available for him. So instead of, shooting at a target that is double covered and, forcing the throw, why not give it to your other guys to contribute? And that's the reason why Eric DeCosta went and got these guys onto the roster to help him spread the ball around. So, one of the caveats of that is that Mark Andrews isn't going to have as big of a year, but he's still dangerous. He's still respected in the league. He's still respected in the locker room. And the only team, or the only people that may think that Mark Andrews has lost a step are the guys outside of that locker room. The guys inside know that he's a very valuable piece of this offense.
Yeah, and again, without him in that offense, other guys get the attention, but Mark is able to bring that still, and that leaves other opportunities. And I know, Sam, I saw, obviously not Ravens fans, but everybody was getting mad at Lamar's passing chart from Sunday night because, these passes, they're all at the line of scrimmage, like, he's getting carried by the receiver, yards after catch, da, da, da. And I'm saying, I love that, man. Give me more of that every single week because we've been begging for years here. That screen game has been terrible for as far as you want to go back. That screen game has been horrible, but they're one of the best screen teams in the NFL this season. Lamar's taking the short and intermediate stuff. He's not forcing the ball. He's reading the whole field. He's not getting caught up on one guy. And I thought he took a step last year in that direction. He's taken a leap this season so far in doing that. So I love that progression from Lamar. I also love the progression of the offensive line, Sam. Again, we talked about it where not as many straight drop back opportunities, only 3 of those in week 3 against Dallas, and against, Buffalo, they didn't need to do as many as well just because they were up by so much for the majority of the game. But this offensive line has been a 180. I mean, you're seeing confidence and guys stepping up. Roger Rosengarten steps in at right tackle because Patrick McCary moves over to the left side with Andrew Voorhees' absence. And these guys are getting to the second level, sealing off edges, getting guys on the ground. How has this transformation been for you over these last couple of weeks, particularly what you saw in week 4? Because I think it's been night and day.
It's almost unbelievable to see the progress that I don't know if it's the fan base that got under his skin or just John Harbaugh, pounding the fact that, he wants to prove the media and pundits wrong. But man, it's been a complete 180. In fact, in the Cowboys game, you saw a immediate transition from Falele being unable to handle stunts and double moves by defenders to completely being able to recognize it at the point of attack. So I don't know if Falele's, just turned a switch, but it's been night and day. And because of that, they're able to use them more. The way they used the interior guards last year, pulling them, having them in misdirections and what have you, they're using that now in the Cowboys game and definitely in the Bills game. So this team is only going to get better if the offensive line continues to grow. We'll see as the weeks go on. You'll see more teams that have the ability to blitz and maybe confuse the offensive line a little bit. But the Bills game, we mentioned it. The Bills are a very base defense, and they play a very similar style to the Cincinnati Bengals, which we'll get to later. So not a lot of testing going on in that department. But as teams get familiar with your nuances and your weaknesses and strengths, we'll start to see what this team is really about. But can't be more impressed with this team. Rosengarten better not leave that right tackle spot. That should be his spot for the rest of the season. He just played out of his mind, finding out what to do with your interior line as far as McCarthy is concerned, whether or not you sub him in at left guard or you find a way to move him to right guard or what have you. I don't know. That's the decision for them. But as far as the right tackles and the left tackle and the center, that position should be solidified. And I think moving forward, you'll see great things from that team.
Isn't it crazy how we've just kind of gone all over the place in terms of the spot we're watching on that line? First, it was right guard, and we're like, okay, who's this right guard going to be? And then it was right guard and right tackle, and we're looking at that whole right side of the line. Like, what are we doing here? And then it was, Falele's playing better now, and McCary's doing well against Dallas, so we kind of done with that. And then it was left guard. Who's going to – now it's, okay, McCary played well there, and Rosengarten played well on the right side, so is it Voorhees or McCary at the left guard spot? And we're just like, man, we're moving all over the place with just where we're focusing each and every week on that line. It's just all over.
Yeah, I think they should keep McCary at left guard. That's my opinion. We'll see what they do. John has his own plans, but I think that unit that you saw on Sunday night is – steadfast, the best unit out there, and they'll be set up for success the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I don't think they can go wrong because even if it is Voorhees, McCary goes back to his super sub position, and you can, again, plug and play him anywhere, and that's what gives him so much value is essentially you have 5 offensive linemen in one with Patrick McCary. So he is just that versatile piece. He and Patrick Ricard have been getting a lot of love over these past couple of weeks, and they both absolutely deserve it. But on the defensive side of the ball, one of the things that's unselfish about that group is, again, they don't care about stats. They care about getting ball carriers down, forcing turnovers. And, they make sure everybody has the success where they gang tackle. They go out there and make sure that they get a ball. It's not about, oh, I want this solo tackle myself or give me that ball. It's, hey, if we get the ball as a unit, that's what's good. And this defense through 4 weeks, Sam, starting to get a little better in the pass department. Run defense, they're still good on everything. Number 1 in yards per attempt, 3.0. Number 1 in total yards, 231. Passing defense, though, they moved up about 6 spots in yards per attempt, 6.4. And hey, they're not number 32 anymore in terms of total yards. They're out of the last place spot, number 29, 1,030. Part of this has to do a bit with game flow, where obviously teams are abandoning the run pretty early. And so the Ravens aren't having as many runs run at them. But that's why, again, I go with yards per attempt over total yards, because yards per attempt is how are you stopping these guys in your opportunities. Total yards is essentially how many opportunities it is. I've loved what I've seen out of this defense. Zach Orr, I don't know if this Buffalo game was his coming out party, kind of like we saw with Mike McDonald early in his Ravens tenure, but it's getting eerily similar, those two tracks with McDonald and Orr, how it panned out for them in their first month of the year.
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier that Zachary Orr is using the same playbook as Mike McDonald. I don't see too many differences and nuances. He's reading off of a script, obviously, but he's starting to get a feel for the game. His corners are getting comfortable with his play calling. His DBs not his DBs, his linebackers and defensive fronts, they're starting to gel together. So I definitely like what I see from this team. And that number 1 rush defense, that's not just game flow. It is part of it, but some of it is just them being able to get things done with 4 or 5 guys and leaving those DBs out there to cover those receivers. So shout out to that defense for what they've done. I think this defensive unit is way better than the lower third of the league that they've shown as far as stats so far this year, and I think they'll get better. Big test coming up with the Bengals of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, but I have to say I'm very impressed with this unit. I saw a slither of possibility of the Bills trying to make a comeback, and Calvin Noy and company shut that down with the trick play that the Bills did for some reason that caused turnover, and that pretty much sealed the deal for the Ravens. But yeah, I'm starting to see things gel together as the offense goes, the defense goes, and as the defense goes, the offense goes, and maybe this team is able to replicate their success from 2023 and get things going on their chase for a potential Super Bowl run.
Yeah, that trick play, one of the worst situational play calls I have ever seen in my life. Yeah. And they almost fumbled the ball twice on that play. Curtis Samuel almost didn't get the ball. And then when Curtis put it back to Josh Allen, so I guess they almost fumbled 3 times on the play because it was that bad. But you know what? Calvin Noy, a heck of a season for him, man. I don't know where they'd be on defense without him. Still pretty good, but not nearly the unit that they have right now. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll get into the Ravens and Bengals game. Week 5, a huge divisional matchup. 2-2 Ravens, 1-3 Bengals. Stay tuned, play and talk about on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So for this Ravens and Bengals game, the Ravens open up as 2.5-point favorites against the Bengals. So if you like the Ravens being favored or the Bengals being underdogs, you can go over on FanDuel and choose your side. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. We are back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still chopping it up on this Purple Friday. Appreciate everybody again for being here. Be sure to make Locked On Ravens your first listen every day, and be sure to check out all the bonus content that we have. We do pregame episodes every single game day now on Sundays. Plus, we go live after every single Ravens game as well. Plus, any other pieces of Ravens big news. So, hey, you know what? Davante Adams gets traded to Baltimore. You know we'll be live over here. You know we'll be live on Locked On Ravens. Or even DeAndre Hopkins, as I know we were talking about him, or Courtland Sutton. But, Sam, let's talk about Ravens and Bengals. Bengals, rough start to the year, much like the Ravens. The difference was that the Ravens went out of their 0-2 hole. The Bengals did not. Bengals dropped to 0-3. The Ravens go to 1-2. Bengals pick up a win against Carolina to get out of the winless streak, but man, the Ravens dominate on Sunday night against Buffalo, and I think they have all the confidence in the world heading to the jungle to play the Bengals. Now, your early thoughts on this matchup, because I think, again, you look at this Bengals defensive front, they're banged up. and they don't necessarily grade out very well against the run in multiple different categories. So I think when you're looking at what we saw last week with Buffalo and what we're seeing personnel-wise this week with Cincinnati, this could be another heavy dose of the ground game, because I just don't know if the Bengals have the personnel right now to match up with Baltimore's physicality.
Yeah, and I've been trying to go back and forth looking at film from last year to see if there are any nuances from the Bengals that may lead me to believe otherwise, but yeah, it's looking tough for the Bengals defense. I don't know how they're going to get it done. They don't blitz. They blitz more than the Bills do. So that's something that they have an advantage over from last week's game, but they still play a light box, meaning they don't have a lot of guys in that box to stop Derrick Henry. Usually, I think they're 10th in the league in their light box rate. So they need to change that a little bit. They need to make sure they have at least 8 guys in the box at all times with his defensive front. Trey Hendrickson he's been limited in practice so far this week, so his availability is crucial. I mean, if they don't have Trey Hendrickson there, there's no chance this team wins the game. I think so much of what the Bengals do successfully, the little bit of success they have on defense, is because of Trey Hendrickson. And what they'll need to do in this game is definitely pinpointing on whether Trey Hendrickson is able to go or not. So his availability will be a huge tell to me whether or not this game is close or if it's another blowout. But yeah, the run defense of the Bengals leaves a lot to be desired. And the pass defense has struggled a little bit. Besides that Chiefs game where they held Patrick Mahomes on the 200 yards, they've struggled a little bit, which is a little bit surprising. I wouldn't hold my hat to that. If I was a Ravens fan or even a coach, I'd still be wary of that pass defense because I still think they're built for success. But statistically speaking, they've been pretty bad this year as well. So that defense leaves a lot to be desired, and I don't know if it's going to be more of the same from last Sunday night. But I know that the Bengals offense is potent. They are powerful. They'll leave a lot of intricacies from the defense to be able to combat that, because last week they didn't have a Jamar Chase on the field. They didn't have a T. Higgins. Now they do, so it'll be interesting to see how Zachary Orr and the DBs of that Ravens defense get it together and potentially stop that potent offense.
Yeah, and the Bengals defense is nothing if not consistent. 18th in both pass and run defense in terms of net yards per attempt. Obviously, there are other stats that go into those, but this is a defense that, again, it's like, what team can match up with Baltimore's physicality? You have to be able to stop their run game early, and if they get out to an early lead, it's their bread and butter, and they can work play action off of that. So those are all really big things. But for the Bengals offense, you mentioned it, Sam, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and their run game has actually been a lot better this year than it was in the years past. I know Joe Mixon's that big name, but Zach Moss and Chase Brown are a lot more of what they actually needed in terms of production out of the backfield. Guys getting involved as receivers as well. They have Mike Gesicki and Eric All, so the tight end room's a little better this season. And obviously Joe Burrow, rough start to the year, but I think he's found his stride there. But looking at keys to the game here for this Ravens team, I think first of all, fast start. You know, whether that's getting out on the ground. We saw the Ravens get out to a huge lead early against Buffalo, and it was to their advantage. Any team that can get to a fast start is huge. You can shut down a level of Cincinnati's offense if you do so, because they're going to have to abandon the run in some way, shape, or form. If, let's say, Baltimore gets out to that 14-3, 10-0 lead, that'll put them in a bit of a hole. Second, blanket Jamar Chase. We saw it with Brandon Stevens. We'll get to him in a couple minutes. Marlon Humphrey, by the way, for those who don't remember, did not play in either of those Bengals games last year. And Brandon Stevens was the one that stepped up and blanketed Jamar Chase and gave him all sorts of issues. And the third one, Sam, I know I said put on gas last week. It's the same message this week. No mercy. No mercy. We saw a team that played for 4 quarters last week in the Baltimore Ravens. I know that second half right at the beginning was a little dicey, but they ended up pulling it together in 4 quarters of consistent football, something that John Harbaugh said they really placed an emphasis on. Do you have any other keys, or do you think those are pretty much what they have to do?
Man, you've been spot on with your keys to victory.
Let's go.
So that's definitely what it is. Get off to a fast start. Try and replicate what you did against the Bills. Keep Joe Burrow away from the field, and when he's on the field, make sure you're blanketing him. I think the Ravens have a great base defense set up with Wiggins on the outside alongside Brandon Stevens and having Marlon Humphrey in that slot. So if the Ravens can continue that formula, have that success, I think they'll be just fine. I don't know if there are any other keys you need to worry about. Maybe making sure that you don't panic if the Bengals get off to a 7-0 lead. Continue your formula, continue your script. Don't deviate from it, and I think the Ravens will be fine. So I think your keys are victory pretty good, not bad.
All right, I'll take it. Not bad. I will take that all day. And I mentioned Brandon Stevens and the players to watch here. He is on there again, just someone who I think they like to play. I mean, Nate Wiggins had 2 dropped interceptions in that week 4 game, and I know his teammates will never let him hear the end of that, but They like what Nate can do. And so that trio of Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stephens, and Nate Wiggins, obviously they have other options in Cincinnati outside of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, at least more so than they have had. I know Tyler Boyd's a big loss for them, but I just think 1 through 5 for them is a lot better than 1 through 5 last year for Cincinnati. I just think that third receiver spot did take a bit of a hit with Tyler Boyd no longer being there. Rashod Bateman, though, Sam, is someone I'm really intrigued to see. He's had a couple of big moments. Obviously, couldn't secure a touchdown last week. He got kind of held, then he dropped the ball. And Odafe Owe is, I can't say enough good things about Odafe Owe and how he's played this year, Sam. Those are guys that I have my eye on in this one. Do you have anybody else you think you should keep an eye on this week?
Yeah, you mentioned Nate Wiggins. I think he is playing phenomenal. Like you mentioned, 2 dropped interceptions potentially. Can you imagine having that stat sheet along with the Ravens win to go bolster the defense's confidence? So he's in the position, which is great for a rookie. And I think the Bengals are going to maybe try and test him. They do move Jamar Chase along a lot. So they may have Marlon Humphrey paired up with Jamar Chase a little bit more than usual. But if they keep Jamar Chase on the outside or T. Higgins on the outside, I think Nate Wiggins has potentially due for a big game. We'll see how he performs against these bigger receivers, but I do like what I see from Nate Wiggins. And then Justice Hill. Justice Hill, in my opinion, has had a phenomenal season, at least a start to the season. I think what I saw from Austin Eckler doing that against the Bengals last week or 2 weeks ago gives me something to consider as far as what the Ravens are doing with those passes to the flat, something that the Bengals have struggled with early on, and especially if they decide to put guys in the box. Could be a big game for Justice Hill. Could be a big day for him.
Yeah, 2 years, $6 million total. Again, what was it, 2 weeks ago they signed on that deal?
Yeah.
And
Smart.
What a steal. What a steal for this Baltimore Ravens team. They find their way, Sam. All those guys that they like, guys on their rookie deals, maybe in their second deal, they find a way to get those guys on fair but team-friendly deals. And That's another example for this team. Now, for my final score prediction, I have the Ravens winning 33-24. I think Cincinnati's offense will be able to put up more points than the Bills did. I think that the Ravens will still win this game pretty handily, though. I think the Ravens will be able to get out to an early lead and kind of dictate through most of the game. Maybe Cincinnati makes a little comeback here and there, but I think this even might be a little bit more of a blowout than the 33-24 prediction indicates. I think this defense is just that's the problem for me for Cincinnati. If I'm looking at where I'd be concerned if I were the Bengals, it's this Ravens offense is on a roll. The defensive line is banged up already. They don't grade up against the run very well anyway. And with Geno Stone there, that's the other big thing. Geno Stone has struggled in Cincinnati. I've seen Bengals fans want to send him back to Baltimore. They say, get this man out of here. It's been that bad for Geno Stone in Cincinnati. So that secondary, it's interesting what they have going on back there, but I feel confident in Baltimore winning this game.
Yeah, me too. If I predicted, I think maybe 30-13 win. The Ravens play too high safety look on the Bengals more than any other team they faced last year. So I think the Ravens are going to be able to slow them down a little bit. They're not going to take too much chances with Joe Burrow. So I think with the Ravens running game and the matchup with this defense, I think it's going to be a long day for the Bengals after reviewing some film. A couple of days ago, I was thinking, maybe 27-24, maybe it's going to be close, but I don't know. This rushing offense is looking phenomenal, and the defensive game plan for the Ravens paired with the addition of Nate Wiggins is very enticing. And you mentioned Marlon Humphrey didn't even play in this series last year, so that's even more weapons and talent on the defensive side for Zach Ertz to use. Give me a 30-13 Ravens win, and they move on to Week 6 against the Commanders.
I like your prediction a lot more than mine. Hopefully they go with yours and win that game in blowout fashion, because I would absolutely love that. Plus, we do know that Mike McDonald was Joe Burrow's kryptonite and that Bengals team's kryptonite. Now, if Zach Orr, we obviously know that defense is pretty similar. So, hey, we'll see if Joe Burrow can solve it or if it will remain Joe Burrow's kryptonite in Week 5. But, Sam, appreciate you for hopping on as always, man. Thank you so much. Tell people, as always, where they can find you and what you're working on.
All right, you can find me on Instagram at Ravenstock Podcast. You can also find me on Twitter X at Ravenstock Pod. Also on YouTube, where you can find most of my podcast work and my special pivotal moments at each game. I do an all 22 review of the Ravens games, and you can find me on Ravenstock Podcast as well. At Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can find my podcast for your listening pleasure as well.
You know the drill. Links to Sam's work in the description down below. Check him out, support him. He knows his stuff. And hey, you know what? You follow him and support his work, you might have the inside scoop on what happens in these Ravens games, as he predicted that Buffalo game to an absolute T. So Sam, appreciate you as always, man. Thank you again. And thank everybody for listening here to Locked On Ravens today. Be sure to like and subscribe in video form, follow along in audio form as well for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage plus more. Coming up, we might be back for a bonus episode tomorrow, depending on where the headlines take us. So stay tuned for that. But if not, we'll of course be back here 100% on Sunday morning for a game day episode ahead of that week 5 matchup between the Ravens and the Bengals. Stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.